Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to WCS EU Challenger. We're here at the Blizzard Esports Arena, and we have already seen a couple of our series play out today. We've had our first series between Serral and Starbuck go in the favor of Serral. We had our second series between, of course, Bly and Drogo go in the favor of Bly. And our third series that just happened with Nathanius and Katz just went in the favor of Bly as well, between Bly and Starbuck. I'm here. My name is Fear Dragon, and I'm joined by Nathanius. How you doing now?
Fantastic.
I'm gonna ask you every single time.
I love ZvZ. You know, that's just my bag of chips. Some people,
it is the most beloved matchup in StarCraft.
Some people wake up in the morning, they like, you know, the smell of a fresh plate of bacon and eggs. You know, the sun's shining down. We're in Los Angeles, but I say no. I'm gonna get up before the sun gets up, before the bacon and eggs are ready. I'm gonna watch some Zerg versus Zerg, and we have had a good amount of it in this group. But we get a little bit something else. We do have a Protoss in this group. So I'm gonna get some variety in my diet today.
Yeah, you don't just have to smell the good old corrosive bile in the morning, as you get a little bit of that.
Oh, there could still be some of that bile in there.
That's probably true.
Yeah, that smell doesn't go away.
Yeah. Although there is something interesting that Katz was talking about, which is that Bly does seem to really like going more toward the muted tech occasionally in PvZ, a bit more often than a lot of other Zerg players would. So that's something I'm kind of looking forward to. He tried to do it, I think, in both of his series, or both of his games versus Drogo, even though it didn't really work out in either one of them.
You don't really see the air tech use early versus Protoss. I mean, Protoss metagame versus Zerg, Stargate openings are still like stupid popular. They're really good. They're really good. Oracles can kill stuff if they don't prepare well. You can get vision. Phoenix can deny. And then, of course, if you're, you know, someone like me, you want to go for big units in the air late game. And carriers are very, very good, of course, if you can build the ultimate army.
Yeah, carriers do pretty well. And you don't really hear it talked about very often, but carriers versus mutas, it kind of goes pretty well for the carriers.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm still interested to see where things are going to go, because this game is going to be Drogo versus Serral. And as well as Drogo was able to do versus Bly, this is still something that a lot of people are giving huge favoritism to Serral for.
Yeah, Drogo winning this, no matter how good he is, no matter what results he's had, just because of the streak that Serral has been on, the way that everybody is perceiving him as the guy on top to beat, would be a huge upset if Drogo was able to make this happen. Let's see if he can. We're loaded in. In the top left, we have the blue Zerg player. He is Serral.
And his opponent in the bottom right is the red Protoss player. It's PtitDrogo.
Yeah, and Drogo's had interesting results over the years. Good upsets versus Koreans, tournament finals, but he's a player that has, you know, his ups and downs. He's a very passionate player, very emotional player. He's one of those guys that wears his heart on his sleeve when you see what he's talking about when he's finishing games. He does commentary as well. Drogo's just an all-around great guy who really loves the game. Serral is a bit more quiet, more reserved type player. He is just very good at StarCraft. I'm guessing that he is that player who wakes up and says, I will just eat ZvZ for breakfast all day so I don't lose this group.
I think you have to if you're a player of Serral's caliber in the European region.
Yeah, well, there's so many talented Zergs in Europe, and really the best Protoss you're looking for is Neeb, usually. He's the big guy that gets in your way at the circuit events.
Yeah, and Serral has shown that he's capable of dealing with players like Neeb, so Drogo, I think that this is, again, it's going to be a big proving match for him. I think he's still maybe looking and saying, okay, I'm going to do what I can versus Serral, but if all comes to worst, I've already beaten Bly 2-0, and that's going to be that decider match of the loser of this series versus Bly. So I think that Drogo's still feeling probably okay about it, but of course he would love for a big opportunity to get first place in his group, avoid a lot of the first seeds in those playoffs.
Yep. I think there's one thing that we can both agree on. It's that Bly is dangerous enough that if Drogo, you know, loses this series, as many people probably think he will, Bly has the X factor to catch him off guard or make a great play that is enough to eliminate Drogo. A rematch does not mean just because he beat him the first time he's going to do it again. They're still very close in terms of which one of them should be able to win.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a really important point there, which is Bly has that X factor. I think it's not something that I would ever give Bly favoritism over Serral in this situation.
No.
But it's still something that I think even Serral's like, I could drop a game to Bly because it's Bly. He just does stuff that you don't see coming.
Bly doesn't win the giant championships, but he can beat anybody on a given day. He is not a player that's like, oh yeah, I'm playing Bly, like this should be a walk. It's like, no. If you don't give him enough respect, things can get really crazy. So nobody wants to have to play him in the deciders match of a group where you're going to be eliminated potentially. So that makes this even more important for Drogo, despite the fact that Serral is an overwhelming favorite. We have the Stargate opening. Nothing surprising there. The Adept Shade is going to run through, try to scout out these bases, sees the pocket expansion being taken. We have Warp Gate on the way. There's the Phoenix is going to be the first building, or unit, excuse me, out of that Stargate. So not rushing for an Oracle or anything. He wants to deny map vision with the Overlords, possibly get a few more Phoenix and do a bit of harass with those later on too.
Yep, first two Adepts poking their way forward. The first Adept was able to get some basic scouting information, mostly just confirming the third. Once you have two Adepts though, you can start one-shotting workers, but nope, he's just gonna back up because he knows Zergling's speed is done. He doesn't want to just get caught and surrounded and picked off. So retreats back home so he can complete that little wall in, and everything should be progressing pretty much as per usual in the PvZ.
Yep, that should be easy for Drogo to power up as well.
Overlord speed?
Since yeah, good for the Overlord speed for the fast scouting, but the Phoenix still shuts it down. The pocket base for the Protoss is always really nice here to get those extra gases up. So don't expect to see Drogo do anything crazy on two bases on this map. You have enough resources available to you that you can build that powerful Protoss army that you want. Especially since the Phoenix opener not crazy aggressive. He did follow it up with the Oracle, so let's see if that bad boy can get any work done in terms of scouting out the tech that his opponent's going for, or maybe grabbing a drone or two here and there.
Yeah, Overlord coming back in just to get a second scout after the Oracle has left, but the Phoenix not joining the Oracle this time, so the Phoenix is going to be able to pick off yet another Overlord, even if it does have speed. Overlord does confirm the robotic facility, and the Oracle, I mean, most it's going to be able to do is probably confirm the lair. He is going to go in for one drone. That's not too bad.
Yeah, it does take some hull damage on the Oracle. It'll be a lot easier for Serral to pick off the next time that it comes back into his base. And the Twilight Council is being added with a Forge. So for Drogo, it looks like he's making a pretty smooth transition forward in tech. We might see him go into the Immortal Charge Lot Archon setup or Immortal Storm. There's a lot of different ways that you can take this. With the Stargate, there's always the threat of going for the big airplay later on. And since Eastwatch is an extremely defensible map, that is never really a bad choice. I mean, getting the attack upgrades for your Zealots is good for the harass, but you can really focus most of your defenses on that fourth base in the center once you move out, which with the number of gases that you have available, you can really do whatever you want. If you're not going to have, it's not going to be a question of, can I afford to go Colossus or can I afford to go for Storm? It mostly becomes, how well am I trading and fighting versus my opponent?
Absolutely. And with the War Prism, that trading and fighting is going to be starting pretty soon. Drogo has just two Adepts from the earlier stage of the game loaded up into that. He's got Charge on the way in that Templar Archives, like you were talking about, going into that Charge Lot Archon style that we see, I think, pretty much dominate the matchup at this point. It's very rare that we see a Protoss player not really going into that kind of composition with a couple of Immortals or something added in. So
it could become very Storm focused once you're worried about like the Hydra Bane, since you don't want to use Zealots to just eat pavement on those Banelings. But let's see what the War Prism can get done. I mean, having this on this map is always so nice. There's a huge amount of airspace to just keep that Prism somewhere safe, and these Adepts should be able to spot the Infestation Pit as well, which would be very nice for just keeping tabs on the tech choice of his opponent. These drones did not actually keep running for Serral, so Drogo's able to grab a handful more.
Yeah, one of the Adepts does go down, but very interesting that Drogo really doesn't want to commit to any of this. He ends up losing both of the Adepts. I guess he's maybe a bit distracted somewhere. Oh, the Hydras, they're trying to cut off the retreat path.
I'm gonna go full in control here. I was gonna pop. I was very terrified for a moment.
Yeah.
Losing that Prism would really suck at this point in the game, but this is really nice because he's kept it alive. All the Hydras are there, they're still looking, and since he knows where those units are, as this Oracle with the Observer combo comes and grabs some tumors, he has the option now to take it a little bit slower, get his Storm done, get that +2 attack, continue to work on that Immortal count, and when he feels comfortable, move towards this center position, which I think we see the probes coming down here. If it hasn't already started, there we go. It is on the way. And this is a really easy base to hold on to. This map, you kind of progress out towards that fourth very naturally. The 5th base in the bottom left can be a little bit weird, but it's still not too far from your 4th. After that, it gets a bit more difficult.
Yeah, kind of interesting. Serral is teching up very, very quickly in this game, which is part of the reason why you see that Drogo has kind of gone uncontested, and also he was able to get a good amount of damage on. I mean, 2 Adepts killing off, I think it was 6 drones is pretty good, and Drogo still has that War Prism alive that he'll eventually be able to move back in with. Actually, Serral may have even forgotten about it because he's not really leaving even his Queen on the side that the War Prism would come in from or anything. Small little things that can sometimes indicate you're still ready for that War Prism, but I do feel like Serral is just hoping that this very, very quick tech up is going to maybe catch Drogo a bit off guard.
Yeah. The tech switch could be nice. It's still difficult to make it work in a big way. Like, if he gets up to Broodlords in time, that's always nice. But that's one of the best parts about opening with Stargate, is that no matter what phase of the game, you're never in that awkward spot where you're fumbling to get up your fleet beacon. If he scouts out that it's something like this fast potential Broodlord play, then he can get the extra Stargates and the fleet beacon immediately. He can start getting to work on whatever units he wants to use to break that. But look at this. The Zealots come in, he sees the Hive is done from the War Prism, but also sees the Spire is done. So he should have some inkling that things are getting weird here there, and he starts the Greater Spire right in his face.
Hey, just like, you know what? My name is Serral. I don't care if you see this. I'm better than you, so it doesn't matter. You can see what I'm doing. You're still not going to be able to stop it, but Drogo is going to try his best to stop it. He's got a lot of Archons, he's got a lot of Zealots, and he's got a lot of very high energy, high Templar.
Yeah, we see the Stasis Wards being used to cover the flank. I really like that. Nice touch. He's basically saying you're going to have to be very careful with how you move these forces. Although Drogo needs to make sure his Zealots do not charge into those Banelings. Only a handful of them will be necessary to wipe out a good chunk of this army. He needs to land some cash money, cash storms. We see the Archons are up front. There's the storms hitting some of these units on the way in.
Okay. He's able to push back a lot of those units. Loses the Orc over there, but the Storms, I mean, he just has so many of them to work with. The problem is he's out of Zealots now. Now making those remaining High Templars into Archons. Is it going to be enough? More Zealots coming in from behind. He's warping in some more, but he needs them now.
Yeah, this is really tricky. Losing that War Prism hurts as well. There's just so many Hydralisks for this army. We're seeing Serral just show he's flexing the macro muscles, and everything is dead. That Prism's going to try to run away with the Immortals, but those 2 Immortals in a Prism are not going to stop so many Hydras as the Stasis Wards trigger on just barely a few Zerglings.
Nate, it's only Serral. Only Serral could not only be teching up to Broodlords or teching up and doing all this stuff, but then he also wins the engagement while he's teching up and grabbing another base. And Drogo's like, well, I was hoping that I was going to kill you here. This is like my best opportunity, but what now?
Yeah, this is where we see that Serral is just a world-class Zerg player. Absolutely dominating Drogo in every facet. He's got his tech all the way up. He's got his upgrades moving, got a ton of damage on that army. And I gotta say, keeping those 2 Immortals alive ends up helping a lot in this scenario since he had the extra ones coming in. But despite the fact that Drogo holds his 4th, we have to ask ourselves, what is he gonna do about the Broodlords that are coming out?
Well, you know, he does have 1 Archon, so he can eventually kill off that Broodlord if it's on a move command for about, I want to say, like 45 seconds to like 3 minutes.
I doubt that's going to happen. He tries to move out again, gets jumped on immediately. He's leapfrogging the Archons and Immortals back using the War Prism, and it's cute, but I mean, he's just been bleeding out his army so much in this game. The melee upgrades are coming in. I think it's like only 4 Broodlords. It's still enough to put the pressure on, but it's like maybe he'll try to plow through this and get underneath them with those Archons that you mentioned, but it's just those Archons for anti-air.
Yeah, I feel like 4 Broodlords can take on 2 Archons, even if the Archons get directly underneath those
Broodlings. And the Broodlings help push back. GG, Serral cleans up and takes game number 1 against Drogo.
Well done. I think sort of an expected result. Drogo putting up a decent effort and a good fight in the earlier stage of the game, getting those 6 worker kills with the War Prism, but it's so hard to get into a position where you can actually say, I feel confident versus Serral right now.
Yeah. Well, Serral's just so good. He's pretty much the best. What are you going to do? You make your best attack against him while he's teching up, while he's getting upgrades,
and he does the teching up in front of you. He's like, okay, while your War Prism's here, let me just show you what I'm planning to do so you can see how you're going to die.
Yeah. He's like, I know you're not going to be able to defend against this because you're not going to have anything once my Hydra Bane army kills everything that you had before anyway. And that just, it hurts. Attacking a player like Serral, he's just always on top of the map. His macro is always perfect. That game looked disgusting, really. You had Drogo start in the end, and Drogo's a good player. He had a great start. You know, you're trying to wind up, get everything going, but then you realize that you're competing against someone who is just too damn good.
Yeah, a little bit. And that's got to be a bit demotivating for Drogo hopping into game number 2, losing like that, where it's just such a straight-up situation, and he even got into a decent spot with the War Prism harassment. But, oh, man, I think the cool thing about Drogo is that I think he's still a very versatile player. He still has a lot of opportunities or different things that he can do. He's one of the players that I think has shown that he's been able to do things like the 7-gate adept all-ins off of 2 bases, kind of do some tricky plays, and maybe sneak one in here.
Yeah, I'd like to see him try one of those sharp builds. I think that's some of the ones that Neeb really likes that we've seen that look borderline unstoppable, and at least those limit the length of the game to the point where your execution really has more of a hand in it. I think back to stuff like, you know, that popular meta build with the mass charge lots where you stop mining your gas, you just get the prism, get charged, and you go. Maybe something like that is what he needs, but it's also possible that Serral's like, yeah, I don't actually lose that either.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, the problem with Serral. I think you and Katz were both saying this, where it's like, well, Serral didn't become the best in Europe because he was okay at defending versus all-ins and stuff. No, he's amazing at defending versus all-ins. He's also amazing at his late game. The problem with Serral is that there is no problem that's very clearly identifiable.
Yep. It's like, those skills are what make players amazing. When you look at someone's like, oh, how do I climb the ladder? Like, how do I win games? How do I get better? It's like, well, if you learn a decent macro build and you just don't die to cheese, you will skyrocket in rank, because that is such a huge component of this game. So many of your opponents will bring those pressure builds, those very strong attacks that just defending those, yeah, you could still lose almost all of your macro games. Most people are going to hit you with some early pressure that all you got to do is just defend without losing too much, and you are leagues ahead of them.
Absolutely. And the kind of cool thing also about Serral is that I think he gets into those positions where I don't even know how he does it so well. He's so good at, I feel like, reading a lot of the momentum of the course of the series, where he just establishes himself as like, yeah, I'm so good at my macro, I'm so good at my mechanics. And then it's right after he's established that and everyone's just thinking about how he can win the late game, and he'll be like, yeah, I'm going to toss out a cheese because I can. And half the time it'll still work because people are like, well, I thought my perception of you is that you're just going to beat me in a late game. Why would you even take the risk? It's like, because I can.
When you got the skills to pay the bills, it don't matter what they say. Serral is an amazing StarCraft player, and I'm very concerned for the chances of his opponent. We have him here in the Southeast, our blue Zerg, leading this series 1-0. He is Serral, the 2018 World Championship Series Leipzig champion.
And his opponent up in the top left, we have our red Protoss player who put up a good effort. He really needs to make something happen in game 2. It's Drogo.
Drogo the drone killer. That's an interesting fact. Killed a lot of drones in his days.
Yeah, even in that last game, killed a decent number. I mean, I was surprised because I'm not used to seeing a 2 Adept War Prism drop. Usually it's like, you'll go in, you'll warp in like maybe some more Zealots or like another Adept or 2. It's like, no, just 2 Adepts, get some good damage done.
I guess in that situation, he's also using the Adept Harass as an opportunity to scout, since he can throw the shades down to the natural.
And that's what he saw. He saw the Infestation Pit as well with that. He saw everything he needed to.
Yeah. It's still so tough to play versus a player like Serral. The thing is, Serral doesn't cheese enough that you can beat him by just being aware. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of players struggled when Neeb was starting to come up, is Serral and Neeb are both very similar in that regard too. They play such good, strong, solid games. When you think about, you know, strong Protoss players or strong foreign players in general of old, it was usually off the back of certain types of builds, right? It's like, oh, Huck was really good, but you were mostly going against like 8-gate builds. And as soon as you could defend that, you were like, yeah, well, there's a reason why he didn't win everything. But Neeb is a player who plays extremely straight up. He's very good, and we've seen that pattern with Serral, where occasionally he'll throw out something cheeky, but for the most part, Serral just plays amazing technical StarCraft and just does not make mistakes playing normal standard macro builds. We used to do like these funny comparisons. We'd be like, well, look how many Marines Bomber has versus everybody else at the 8-minute mark. It's like, well, look how many workers Serral can get up to while still having an army and defending the attack and scouting. He doesn't care that he throws the overlords in. He doesn't care if you open Stargate. He will scout you. He will see what you're doing, and he's just going to outplay you as the game goes further and further.
I'm so glad you actually mentioned all of that, because that actually really, it touches on a point that I strongly believe in, that in a lot of ways, these players end up expressing a bit of their personality in their play. And I feel as though you talk about someone like Neeb, or you talk about someone like Serral, where they are capable of cheesing, but for the most part, they're very straightforward people. And I feel like if you ever hold a conversation with Serral, he is very straightforward and blunt, and he doesn't really kind of beat around the bush. And that's kind of the way his play is also. It's very straightforward. There's not usually a lot of like cheekiness to it, and occasionally you'll see little bits and pieces of it. Yeah. But
when they do it, it will be something that they've carved out, especially like that that charge lot build that I mentioned. Like Neeb will do it, and it's a very like all-in-ish build, but I'm sure that Serral has a few of those up his sleeve. We've seen it before. I think in this match, there's no reason to risk the game on anything with chance if you're so much better than your opponent. You don't want to give the game as an opportunity to Drogo where you say, hey, Drogo, all you got to do is defend this all in, and you're actually probably going to win the game. So, well, I can play this out, take my bases, move forward at a good pace, and just see what we can get done.
All right, Drogo coming in with the Adepts. He might end up losing one of them. Oh, that's a little bit unfortunate, but gets some basic scouting information at the natural, gets out with the other Adept. I don't think he ever got into the main base with any of his shades. I think it took a little while for him to get over from the third over to the natural and stuff, but not really too much to see just yet outside of just how many gas geysers there are, if there's a lot of drones, etc., and whether or not layers started up. But we do see just spore callers coming out. It's all pretty standard play from Serral, and Drogo's most likely going to assume as much.
Yep, nothing crazy going on just yet. Twilight Council is the follow-up. I mean, in the last game we saw him also go for the Robo and the Forge, so skipping those might give us an inkling as to what he's really trying to do. I think it's worth keeping an eye on the gases in the natural expansion to see whether he's going to continue to keep mining off of everything. Since it is just the Twilight right now and a bunch of gateways, what is he going to add on to this for his push? Without a Forge or a Robo, it seems unlikely that he's just going to push straight for that third base, but perhaps he's concerned about an attack, or he just wants to make a big one soon himself.
Ooh, Serral cutting some corners here. Didn't opt to go for the Spore over by that natural, so he ends up losing 3 workers. I think the Phoenix is going to go down, though. Drogo busy with the Lings over at the front, making sure that he didn't let those slip in. Losing the Phoenix does kind of sting, because the Oracle, keeping that alive is a bit more important, but it's also a nice little backup scouting tool.
Huh. So we have Resonating Glaives and the third base starting now for Drogo. No Forge, no Robo. He's just playing with a bunch of Adepts at the moment. Is his plan to make half-saturate the third base, and then add a bunch of gateways? Because he also doesn't have a crazy number of warp gates either. Yeah, if he had 8 warp gates, or even just 7 warp gates, like 1 or 2 more, then I would definitely be with you. I would say, oh yeah, you know, this is like maybe even a fake out third. He's not actually making more workers right now, which makes me think this still is a fake out third. And he's definitely hiding his Adepts inside of his natural. Now he's going to shade them out and make his way across the map. He's hoping that Serral just sees this third and says, okay, yeah, like, you're still just going to play a little bit economically focused. The Lings see some of the Adepts. I don't think they saw all of them, though. Yep, and this is really big because the Adepts are going to be warped in back home. And he's like, well, that's a lot of Adepts to just add. But does he realize that that next wave is straight over? Oh, catches the Queens at the end of the creep.
Oh, this is such a huge deal, because now Serral's down to just 3 of these Queens. The Roaches are coming out, and they do intercept the Adepts before they get into a mineral line. So the Shades are not going to allow them to immediately get to a mineral line. That's a huge deal, because that means they can't immediately start picking off some of those drones.
Yeah, with a number of Adepts here, they are able to overwhelm the Roaches to a good degree. Several of the Adepts are going to plant themselves behind that third base. The rest of them are going over towards the natural, and here we see Drogo trying to make this work, but there are a lot of Roaches giving chase to those Adepts. Several more are on the way. 6 drones have died so far. Drogo does actually, he still has that third base. He did let it finish, so after all is said and done, he just needs to defend any counterattack, and he'll have a lot to work with. Really good damage being done by Drogo.
Yeah, he's doing really good damage, and what's interesting is that he didn't really have a warp prism or anything behind this, so in reality, his reinforcements are very difficult. He does recall 4 or so Adepts out, and he has a lot of Adepts back out at home. I think the big question here is going to be, can Drogo defend against a counterattack from Serral, who lost a decent number of workers but made a lot of Roaches?
Yeah, it all comes down to this. He just has to hold this push, and he should be feeling quite happy. But with the number of adepts on the map, maybe that's possible. He's giving chase. Is he going to engage this? He does. Oh, maybe overstepping a little bit. Did not see the rest of those roaches in the back. And Drogo, I think, getting a little bit overzealous with this push. Most of his adepts haven't cleaned up. And Serral is looking to take this game off this counterattack with the number of roaches that he has. He's going to send some home, but he says, you probably don't have anything back at your base, PtitDrogo. And now he's going to rip apart the cybernetics core. He's only going to be able to warp in zealots. And with the 2 robo facilities finishing, try to get some immortals out.
And remember that those zealots are not going to have charge. They're just going to be gradually walking their way into the roaches. And Serral, back at home, he's losing a lot of workers. And at the same time, interestingly enough, he only just now is actually breaking into Drogo's natural. So Drogo's having time to warp in some adepts and also get up those immortals for himself.
Serral doesn't realize that those 2 immortals are coming out inside of the main base. The double robo was definitely a good call for getting out what he needs to defend, but in the meantime, he will have lost a lot from this natural. These gateways haven't been used too much, but as soon as he steps forward and sees that immortal, I don't know, is he going to go straight for it? The second one on the top of the ramp is going to really punish him if he tries.
I think this is going really well for Drogo. He's going to lose a few more workers here, which is really painful. They're both down to just 27 to 31. But these immortals are putting in so much work. Oh god, look at the mini-map though. These roaches may be getting cleaned up, but look at all of these other roaches popping out. And they're just going to go for the third base. They realize that, you know what, I don't need to commit into those immortals.
The economic disadvantage here is going to be too much because at the very least, Serral can move drones to his third base. Getting the Spire is his way of saying, I need an insurance policy against these immortals because I'm getting a lot of roaches. But if he's actually double pumping immortals, well, he's already got 4 out right now, which with just a little bit of support can do tremendous wonders. So if he doesn't want to go into something like Ravagers to bust the wall down and give himself an opportunity to dive on those immortals, he's going to have to go into the mutas.
And I like this. Serral has also been able to drone up. That is the advantage of Zerg, that larva production. You can produce so many workers so quickly. And Drogo, on the other hand, can only make 2 workers at a time. He can make his army units at the same time, but he is just getting pinned back. And he can't really do anything to establish a third until he gets up a sufficient number of immortals. And he's getting there, but Serral's climbing further ahead. And like you said, that insurance policy of the Spire is going to complicate things.
Yep. Adding a bunch of sentries, this is just going to turn into an immortal sentry push to try and end the game.
If he force fields in these roaches, though, okay, Serral's not going to. He's not going to fall prey to it. I was going to say, maybe if he catches all of these roaches, he can go for a counterattack across the map, but that's pretty rough now.
Well, he's threatening the base trade here, too. He's just saying, hey, man, if you want to try to move out and attack me, I will go for the counter because I've got Mutalisks on the way that you don't know about. And with a handful of them, I should be able to deal with the sentries without too much difficulty, and then I'm just going to make the big push. He needs the Prism there to try and save some of those units, maybe make a swap into getting some Stalkers, but they won't have Blink. Good pinch off of these roaches, but right now, Serral's just trying to buy time. That's all he needs.
Yeah, and the awkward thing is that whenever he uses those force fields to try and catch even just a few of the roaches, not a massive number of them, there's actually no energy for hallucinating Phoenix Scout. Now he's just going to use the Warp Prism to scout out with the Adepts, but this is only going to see the third. It's not going to see the Spire, and guess what? The mutas are out. Yep,
and they're going to pick out the sentries, realizes he has nothing to deal with this, and GG is called. Serral takes the 2-0 convincingly.
I think that was pretty convincing in the end, and Serral, I think it's so difficult to do anything against this guy. He's just impervious, it feels like.
Serral's really, really good at StarCraft. Like, you're looking at a situation where Drogo picked a sharper build. He made the Adept play work even against the Roaches, did tremendous economic damage, and his follow-up, I mean, if he could have done it just a little bit faster, it would have made a world of difference.
That one shade into the roaches where he just miscalculated, I feel like that was...
He thought he was splitting the roaches. He's like, oh yeah, like my 20 adepts will kill like the 7 roaches just fine. But it's like, actually, no, there's another 15 roaches here. Most of your adepts are gone. And that's where you give up the third base. He wasn't able to hold the natural long enough. You just needed a little bit more time. Those adepts with those 2 immortals would have been game-changing.
Yeah. That is a bit rough, but do not fret or frown if you're a big PtitDrogo fan, because he is still going to be playing in that final match for Europe. He's going to be facing off versus Bly for the last spot in this group for the playoffs. And that's going to be coming up in just a little bit, Nate. I'm looking forward to that. Do you have any predictions on that one?
Should be a good one. I'd never make predictions when Bly's involved. It's the big that's a caster trap to fall into.
Smart.
So I'm just gonna say should be a weird one, and I'll be enjoying watching it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna enjoy watching it too. We'll be back in a little bit with more WCS Europe action.
This sport town